The clock is ticking. The countdown has begun. It's time to welcome a new year, but it's also time to look back at the year that is wrapping up.
We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
America is back.
Is that okay, guys?
Miss Universe is India.
2021, a year like none other. While the pandemic continued to make headlines, the world's eyes were transfixed on Afghanistan and the humanitarian crisis that unfolded there. The year also saw tensions flare up between Israel and Palestine. The world also woke up to climate change a tad bit too late, though. And we at WION World is One covered it all. We brought you exclusive stories, unbiased analysis and perspective, and stories that touched your hearts. And you watched them with us across all our platforms. Now let's begin the countdown and show you our top trending stories of 2021. This is what the world watched this year on WION World is One. On the 2nd of July this year, the New York Times, a newspaper which prides itself as a beacon of credibility, needed a reality check. The NYT published a job ad seeking a business correspondent from India. But the bizarre job description suggested that the NYT was looking for someone who was willing to look at stories from a lens of prejudice.
Mr. Modi is advocating a self-sufficient muscular nationalism centered on the country's Hindu majority. That vision puts him at odds with the interfaith, multicultural goals of modern India's founders. And just in case you're wondering, I'm reading from the so-called job description of the New York Times. It's not an opinion piece, although it sounds like one.
WION's Gravitas team picked up the story and showed us why this was highly problematic.
Clearly, they have some serious issues with India. And fair enough, every publication is entitled to its biases and opinions. But then, they should not claim to be the flag bearer of unbiased journalism. The New York Times cannot claim to seek the truth and help people understand the world while planting biased reporters in the world's biggest democracy and also writing op-eds on India's supposedly battered free press. It does not work that way, at least not in India. It may work in China. Of all the publications, the NYT should know this. It reportedly received $50,000 from China's state propaganda outlet, the China Daily, in the last 4 years. $50,000. I'm not making this up. I'm citing documents filed by China Daily with the US Justice Department. Take a look.
The report got more than 340,000 views on Twitter. This next story is from October 19th. China is a country that maintains a tight grip on its media. Unbiased journalism is not something that the Chinese understand, and so the Chinese government's notoriety goes unreported and thereby unnoticed. But our Gravitas team did a story on China's hidden debt.
China has lent billions to governments around the world. A lot of these loans were given in secret. We're calling them China's hidden loans. And they're burning a hole in the pockets of the borrowers. If China's economy collapses, these countries will all suffer. And that's just part of the problem. Hidden debt hurts all of these countries.
165 countries owe at least $385 billion to China. Out of these, 42 countries owe more than 10% of their GDP to China. Shocking to say the least. So what is it that drives China to give such heavy loans?
Because China lends heavily to unstable states and weak economies. It lays that trap. I'm talking about countries like Iraq. Iraq has borrowed close to $9 billion from China. North Korea has borrowed more than $7 billion. Ethiopia, close to $7 billion. Russia, $151 billion. Venezuela, almost $82 billion. These countries are either authoritarian regimes where corruption is rampant and accountability is zero, or they're caught up in major civil unrest.
Trying to pay off these loans is another story in itself. Some countries are eating into their own savings. Others are facing rampant corruption and labor violations. So what is the way forward?
Global regulators must step up their vigilance on Chinese loans. Otherwise, they could be forced to deal with an unprecedented economic crisis, one that will catch the entire world off guard. With the great fall of China, you could see many other economies collapsing.
The report got some 767,000 views on WION's Facebook page. Will Facebook read your WhatsApp messages? We asked this question on January 6th on Gravitas. WhatsApp is a messaging platform that most of us use. It is one of the many applications which keeps us connected to our family, friends, and our colleagues. But is this platform putting your privacy at stake?
It will be able to gather a lot more information about you, your account information, which in this case means your phone number, your address book information, so all your contacts, your status information. This could be messages like available or busy that go right below your profile. That's your status. All the data on your transactions and payments, that's because this will be linked to their new feature, WhatsApp Payments. So they'll be able to track all your payments, all your transactions, and customer support communications. This could be messages you exchange with a business on WhatsApp. Facebook will be able to access all of this from your phone.
Well, this is not all. The new privacy policy came as a privacy nightmare for all users.
Basically, Facebook wants to know how and where you spend your money. In specific circumstances, WhatsApp can collect data on messages too. Like when a message has not been delivered, WhatsApp can keep the message in encrypted form for 30 days. As it tries to deliver it, after that, the message will be deleted. Similarly, when you forward a message with media, like a message with a video or photos, WhatsApp says it can temporarily keep the message on its servers. So while WhatsApp may not technically be reading your encrypted chats with friends and family, it can still know a lot about you. And all that information can potentially be used to create your unique profile.
As experts have rightfully pointed out, if you don't pay for a service, then you are the product. And data is the new oil, a valuable entity that creates huge profit.
Nothing is free in this world. It applies to WhatsApp too. You think it's a free messaging service. It's not. Mark Zuckerberg bought WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014. 19 billion. Many said he'd spent too much money. But he had a plan. Did you know that Facebook makes 99% of its revenue from advertising? That's according to one report. Imagine how much more it can make with targeted ads.
This Gravitas report got more than 616,000 views on Facebook. It would be fair to call 2021 the year of space exploration. On February 18th, NASA's Perseverance rover landed on Mars. As the touchdown was confirmed, NASA erupted in cheers. Indian-American scientist Swati Mohan told the world, things are looking good. Through this mission, the world got a chance to see some of the most sophisticated images of the red planet.
The ambitious NASA mission that is searching for signs of life on the red planet. It landed on Friday near an ancient river delta. NASA has released a high-speed video of the landing. The quality makes one feel like they're riding along. It shows the supersonic parachute opening up, with the rover dangling from its surface. On a downward spiral towards the orange Martian sky, As the rover nears the surface and rocket engines lower it for touchdown, streams of surreal red dust kick up in the air.
Scientists and space enthusiasts from around the world were thrilled. And then on February 24th, Perseverance sent one of the first audio clips recorded on the surface of Mars.
This first-of-its-kind audio was captured by two microphones mounted atop the Perseverance rover.
The report created a lot of buzz on WION social media. It had more than 1.1 million views on Facebook. By June this year, we were more than a year into the pandemic. The virus had already paralyzed economies, international travel and trade. At this point, the conversation around COVID-19 vaccines had taken center stage. But questions continue to linger to this day. Where did the virus come from? Did it spread from a wet market in China, or was it a calculated move to trigger a bio-war? WION tried to connect the dots and put things into perspective. WION reported on the lab leak theory for the first time. Our executive editor Palki Sharma Upadhyay revisited the story in June this year on Gravitas Plus.
We know there's a lab in China, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It's a high-security biosafety lab run by the state-owned Chinese Academy of Sciences. This lab is the largest virus bank in Asia. It has at least 1,500 strains of deadly viruses. This is where it's located, just 5.5 kilometers away from the Huanan seafood market, which was identified as ground zero for the Wuhan virus. Now, this lab has a long history of shady experiments.
We reminded you about the lab leak theory, which was earlier conveniently disregarded and was now back on the table.
It took the world 18 months, countless mutations, 3.6 million deaths, and 171 million plus cases to give the lab leak hypothesis a second look. 18 months. That's the kind of time that China was given to erase all evidence.
WION faced boycotts and bans for reporting on what could potentially be a source of millions of deaths around the world. We kept the conversation around the lab leak theory going. Our reportage was called a conspiracy theory and even fake news. But these labels did not deter us from putting out facts and certainly did not stop our viewers from supporting us. Our report on the lab leak theory got 1.7 million views on YouTube. August 15th, 2021, all hell broke loose in Afghanistan. The Taliban was back in power and desperate Afghans tried to flee their homeland. Visuals coming in from ground zero were distressing, to say the least. Afghans holding on to the C-17 and falling to death as it took off. American troops rescuing Afghan children. People trying to make it to a new country to start a whole new life. It was painful to report, but as real as it could get. WION was the only Indian news channel to make its way to Kabul.
WION reports from Kabul airport.
Behind me is the line which is leading towards this aircraft. More than 18,600 people have been flown out in the past 24 hours.
Fly on the wall reportage. Multi-government airlift operation.
The plane that I'm standing in is full of Afghan citizens, those who are trying to flee to safety.
Afghanistan's best and brightest leave.
This aircraft takes them to safety, a step closer to freedom.
Anywhere but here. WION in Afghanistan, reporting from Ground Zero.
Our correspondent Anas Malik reported from the war zone, bringing you reports and stories from the heart of the conflict. The reportage was challenging, to say the least. There was a lot to lose, but we persevered and our viewers were hooked. One of our reports from the Kabul International Airport got 1.6 million views on Facebook. In May this year, conflict flared up between Israel and Hamas yet again. This was being called the heaviest fighting in the region since 2014. Then Prime Minister Netanyahu had declared that Israel would continue to strike Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, said that there would be no red lines while responding to quote-unquote Israeli aggression.
The Palestinian militant group has fired over 1,600 rockets towards Israel, while Israel military says that it struck Gaza targets over 600 times. Hamas also fired a large rocket at Israel's Ramon airport near Eilat, where incoming passenger flights were diverted after a wave of rocket launches.
Both sides were on the boil. The United States supported Israel's right to defend itself.
My expectation and hope is that this will be closing down sooner than later. But Israel has a right to defend itself when you have thousands of rockets flying into your territory. But I had a conversation for a while with the Prime Minister of Israel, and I think that my hope is that we'll see this coming to conclusion sooner than later.
But the question is, what led to this situation? Violence initially erupted at the Al-Aqsa Mosque located in Jerusalem. Palestine called for a third United Nations meeting within 1 week. Turkey called for nations to come together against Israel. WION's correspondent Jodie Cohen brought you first-hand account of the clashes.
So here I am in the Nana, which is just 1 hour from Jerusalem. So what you can hear in the background are the sirens, alerts going off in the southern districts near the border with Gaza. So this is what the rocket alert siren app looks like. We'll have to wait in the shelter now. I'm just going to turn so you can see here. I'm actually really nervous right now. A friend of the family has passed away and there's been a funeral.
WION was the only Indian news channel reporting from Israel itself. Our reportage got more than 2.9 million views on YouTube. The list of things that China may be covering up is long, from the pandemic's origin to the disappearance of Peng Shuai. Here is another event that demands probing. On November 9th, 2021, WION's Gravitas team reported on China's mysterious blasts. 10 explosions within a week across the country, 13 deaths and many people injured. So what caused these blasts? Were these just a series of accidents, or was there more than what meets the eye? We tried to connect the dots. Our analysis did not rule out the possibility of foul play.
From where I sit, the road does not look too smooth. There are several hurdles, starting with the virus they made in Wuhan. Well, cases are rising again in China, plus there is a debt bomb that is exploding one default at a time. In less than 24 hours from now, Chinese developer Evergrande will have to make another round of payments. More than $148 million is due for the 11th of November. The company narrowly escaped defaults in October. Will it miss the deadline this time? Well, shares of Evergrande are already down in anticipation. And this is just one player we're talking about in China's real estate industry. The sector currently owes around $5 trillion. There have already been some offshore debt defaults, credit rating downgrades and share sell-offs. Real estate was one of the main drivers of China's much-celebrated growth. Today, it's become a liability. Properties are on hold, apartments have not been delivered, and people are waiting. Obviously, they're unhappy.
This Gravitas report got more than 3.1 million views on YouTube. On October 30th, our executive editor Palki Sharma Upadhyay asked $1 million question on Gravitas Plus.
Why are people leaving their jobs? Where are they going? And most importantly, should you consider quitting too?
These are questions that most people struggle with. Offices, after all, are not the most forgiving places. A lot is expected from both employers and employees. Some even relocate to different cities and countries to get the job of their dreams. And then comes the great dissatisfaction. But by then, it's a bit too late to backtrack. The report highlighted how the pandemic played a pivotal role in making people realize what they actually want from their workplace.
It held up the mirror. It forced people to see the unpredictability of life, to reflect on what really matters to them. Many realized it's not work, or at least not their present work. So millions began reimagining their lives.
The report also highlighted that everything said and done, an employer needs to be more understanding and accommodating. of their workers' needs and more accommodating of their workers' priorities. And these requirements are subjective. One might like the routine of 9 to 5, while another might like the flexibility of working remotely from a random cafe in the mountains. The trick is to understand your employees or lose that crucial talent to another company. We supported our analysis with data.
The world's working population is planning to switch this year. 95% of Americans are thinking of quitting their current jobs this year. Many already have.
Our report on the Great Resignation was viewed by more than 3.1 million people on YouTube. In August this year, history repeated itself. The Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan. The Taliban was seen in streets across the city, while hundreds of civilians tried to escape the country, flooding Kabul's international airport. The Taliban patrolled Kabul, trying to project calm as helicopters raced overhead throughout the day to evacuate the personnel. The memory of the Taliban's oppressive rule from the 90s was still fresh, and yet the rapid territorial gains that they made and the sudden takeover came as a rude shock for everyone. The world leaders watched, they met, they deliberated on how to respond to this new government in Afghanistan. But back home in Afghanistan, there was fear, uncertainty, and utter helplessness.
We spotted traffic only when we reached the airport. Already, there are hundreds and thousands of desperate Afghans trying to board a flight out of the country. They have been unable to leave. But that hasn't stopped more people from making their way to the airport. All roads leading are clogged, and there is intense traffic. We're seeing that the Taliban are now out on the roads. They are controlling the affairs of the city practically.
So what did the morning after look like? Well, some areas were being patrolled by the Taliban, while others witnessed an eerie silence. The flag of Afghanistan was seen lowered in Kabul. Reports suggest that the Taliban will replace the national flag with their own flag. Taliban officials said that they had started collecting weapons from civilians as the people no longer need them for personal protection. The Taliban spokesperson Suhail Shaheen even said in a message that there are strict orders not to harm anyone. On the streets of Kabul, the Taliban was busy conducting interviews, trying to project an idea of peace and normalcy in the capital. The Taliban conducted interviews to gauge the sentiment on ground. WION's report on this political crisis got more than 5.6 million views. It is one of the most watched stories on WION's YouTube channel. Now, those were some of the stories that you showered love on our channel, WION World is One. But there were other trends that made a lot of noise across the world this year in 2021. Let's take a look at some of them.
Can we skip to the good part?
Hey,
¿Quieren como
le
el proceso
presento
tal cual?
a 43.
Those were the stories which connected with all of you on WION. You showered them with views and we welcome your feedback. And as we wrap up this special show and get ready for 2022, let's not forget about the story that will continue to affect all of us for decades to come. 2021 was a year of climate change. Floods, storms, wildfires, the world was devastated by them all. It is a story which will continue to make headlines in the future unless we act now. Think about that as we wrap up this special show. Thanks for watching with me, Priyanka Sharma. WION World is One wishes you a Happy New Year.